All right, guys. All Facts Media here. My name is Andrew Robinson. I'm joined by my twin brother, Aaron Robinson. And today we have a special guest. We have Howard University head men's basketball coach Kenny Blakeney here with us. Coach, first of all, thanks for joining us.
What's going on, brothers? How y'all doing?
Doing good. Can't complain. How about yourself?
Everything's good considering the circumstances, man. God bless.
Sir. Yes, sir. First and foremost, before we kind of get into the coronavirus topics and everything, you had a playing career back before you started coaching. Obviously, you were able to, from the area, you went on to play at Duke University. So kind of talk about your playing career, your journey kind of from playing and then transitioning into coaching and kind of how you got to be, where you're at today.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I forget that I was a player once, So to remind me of that is it brings a laugh to my face. I grew up in Northwest Washington, D.C., right in the area between Tacoma Park, Fort Totten, over near Coolidge. Some of us call it Uptown. And, I grew up in an era where it was a very challenging and different way to grow up. Unfortunately, in D.C. during the late 80s, mid to late 80s, early 90s, there was a crack epidemic that hit the city. The city became the murder capital of the world. So it was honestly for me, athletics was in basketball specifically was something that kind of took me away from that. I did grow up in, like I said, an urban area, so basketball was always important to my community, which kind of trickled down to me to make it important to me. The fact about competing and, it's a little bit different, to be honest with you, because when, our era grew up, we played a lot on the playground. And the competition there, you could have, 20 people at the playground. So, if you didn't win, you weren't good, you didn't play. And it really taught me early on about competing. I was always the youngest guy in the group. I would be running with my older brother or my older cousins or just older dudes in the neighborhood going from playground to playground to playground, just looking for the wreck. So, it was really, I guess that was my start to understanding and getting into the game a little bit. I was very lucky to have some recreation coaches and boys club coaches at Number 8 Boys Club, at Remote Recreation Center with my man, the late Mr. Fluff Parker, that really helped to, I think, guide and instill the love of the game and also a lot of confidence in teaching of the game to me. So, my primary years from, starting the game at 6, 7 years old until I was around 12 or so was all mostly in boys club and the rec center. After that, I got into a little bit more competitive basketball, playing some AAU stuff and getting into a little bit more basketball at that time, I guess was just kind of taking off a little bit. Went to Remote Junior High for a year before attending Dematha. Had a great run at Dematha, was part of some really neat programs there, played for the legendary Coach Morgan Wooten, and was on the varsity for 3 years. I think we won 2 championships in those 3 years, and was runner-up for the third year that I was on varsity. Through being at Dematha and having a chance to have some exposure with college recruiting, accepted a scholarship to go play my college ball at Duke University. Was very lucky with the timing of that, where I was part of Duke's first 2 national championship teams. Very lucky and blessed to have been a part of that. And, from there, after I graduated, I got into coaching. It's something that I knew I wanted to do, was something that I think I prepared myself for. Having a chance to play for our boys club coaches and rec league coaches that were incredibly fundamentally sound teachers, having a chance to play for Coach Morgan Wooten at Dematha and his staff, the assistants, was, incredible, and that prepared me for Duke. And then having a chance to, play for Coach K and be assisted by, guys like Mike Bray, who's the head coach at Notre Dame now, Tommy Amaker, who's the head coach at Harvard, Pete Gaudette, who is one of the best big man coaches in the country, Quinn Snyder, the coach now at Utah Jazz, Jay Billis, the face of ESPN. Those were all guys that were in and around the program as mentors, as coaches while I was in school. So, it's kind of like a Forrest Gump moment, to be honest with you, man. I just kind of happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Obviously, for you, your staff at Howard obviously features a former Duke player as well, and Tyler Thorne, another former ACC player, former Mike Bray player, and Eric Atkins. So talk about that, having those guys on your staff with you, at Howard.
Yeah, and we also have a really young coach, Jake Brown, who is very talented and has had a, really really great career of his own as a player and now as a young coach. But Jake's from the Pennsylvania area. He played as a college basketball at Middlebury, did a graduate year at Columbia, and he and I were on staff together at Columbia. And he was so impressive of a person, I think, in the way he worked every day. I really, when I got the Howard job, I knew that he was somebody that I wanted to bring along with me. Having Tyler and Eric also from, being from the area and their pedigree is really important for our program, along with what Jake has accomplished. The Howard job is important to me because it's Howard. There's a lot of tradition, a lot of history, a lot of culture that has come from that university. And I wanted to have young men that reflected, I think, what Howard students would be. Both Tyler and Eric and Jake all would have been able to get into Howard as non-athletes. And that was really important to me. I wanted to have young men that were, savvy enough, young enough, and also guys that were good players and have had their experiences to be able to, one, help me navigate the university and the campus a little bit, and two, with recruiting, when I looked at it, they're players and recruits when we're going to homes that would, love for, Ty, Jake, and Eric to mentor them. But also when they're in these homes for home visits or working and partnering with and recruiting, they're guys that, parents that it would resonate with the parents for these guys to be mentors. So that was really important for me when putting these guys together. And they're young enough, man, they can still jump out on the court and, give our players a little work every once in a while.
Sure. Also, you mentioned it before, like obviously going to Duke and being around guys like Coach K and Mike Bray and Quinn Snyder. Obviously, there's a lot of pedigree that comes with it as well. How did those guys kind of influence you, or kind of were you able to take anything from those guys and kind of put it into your coaching philosophy now at Howard?
Yeah, I probably didn't do a really good job at it this year, but obviously, there's things that you do want to take from those guys. All those guys that are really, really smart, really generous with their time and their information, and to have a relationship with those guys as coaches, assistant coach, or head coach, and now as a guy that is I'm a college coach now, and having conversations with these guys at a different level is pretty neat. The brotherhood. When we talk about Duke, we talk about the brotherhood, and it starts and ends with Coach K, and just the consistency of work that he's put in over the last 40 plus years at Duke has been incredible. And he is he has done as good of a job in any industry as anybody. point blank. You can look at across the board, whatever it may be. I mean, that dude's the man. So people can like him, people can not like him, people can like Duke, cannot like Duke. You know, the five banners and all of those things speak for itself. And I'm not trying to be cocky or arrogant. It's just, it is what it is. And, you know, when the leader of Duke is one of those guys that is ultra organized, ultra competitive, he's intelligent, he's smart, he's a brilliant communicator. You know, he understands people, he understands coaching. And it kind of trickles down through, you know, through the assistant coaches to the players, and that's how that thing has been rolling for consistently for a long time. So yeah, when you talk about a Mike Bray or a Quinn Snyder or a Tommy Amaker or guys like that, you know, it's you know, those are lessons and a lot of the teachings that, you know, were passed down from Coach K to them.
Obviously, you know, we're in a unique situation where obviously you're the head coach at Howard University. You're a DC native. You know, talk about that. You know, being able to, you know, coach at a school that you grew up, you know, grew up around, and obviously being able to recruit in a neighborhood that is known, you know, for being a hotbed for talent in this DMV area.
100%. I think, you know, I wanted to be the coach at Howard. Like, I really wanted the Howard job, and you know. The brand really means a lot to a lot of people, and it resonates, you know, throughout the country and actually throughout the world. It's one of those brands that, you know, stands alone for, you know, the alums that have come through and the things that those alums have done. You know, we have a lot of firsts at Howard with, you know, Thurgood Marshall being the first, you know, African-American Supreme Court justice. Andrew Young being the first African-American diplomat to the UN. You know, you can just go down the line. Governor Douglas Wilder of Virginia, you know, Mayor Dinkins of New York. You know, you can just continue. And what, you know, to be in Washington, D.C., I just felt like there was no better mixture of the tradition and the history of the University of Howard and a mixture of, I think, a hotbed of recruiting, you know, guys that come from great programs in a very competitive area of basketball. So I think it can be something that's almost lightning in the bottle. When I talk about it, I talk about when it ignites, because I think it's one of those brands that when it ignites, it's going to be huge.
Kind of switching gears a little bit, you know, we're in a unique time right now with the coronavirus, and it's definitely had a great impact on college basketball as a whole and kind of the timeline for programs moving forward. Kind of talk about your program, Howard, and kind of how the coronavirus has impacted your program, kind of with, you know, maybe recruiting or planning summer workouts or just anything like that.
Sure. You know, I think, you know, as you guys know, we were all down at the MEAC tournament. Yeah. And it was literally, we played, I think, on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night, and the next night the tournament's canceled, probably like during a game. And, you know, so it was, we drove back to Washington, D.C., and, you know, a little bit of this about my experience over the last 3 weeks, and then I'll get into my teams. But my wife and daughter live in New York City. My wife works in an industry where they're not the same kind of jobs for her. She works in fashion and has been in the business for 25 years. And they're just not those kind of opportunities in the DC area for her. So she and my daughter were still working and going to school. So we drove back to DC. I literally jumped in my car with concern for them because they were working and going to school. I drove right to New York. And basically, you know, a couple of days after that, my daughter's school was, you know, canceled. My wife's work, you know, was remote from home. And we quarantined in a 1-bedroom apartment in New York for 3 weeks. And being at ground zero for 3 weeks gives you an appreciation for things that probably you haven't ever appreciated. It was literally, we didn't want to leave our apartment to go take our trash out. I had to get on the elevator one time in 3 weeks to go down to like drop some mail off for some stuff that I was going to be late with. And, in the hallway, they have, your 6 feet kind of, lines on the ground that you have to stay behind. They have signs on the doors for the stairwells that talk about, this way only down, and for the other stairway, this way only up. There was like 4 taped lines in the elevator for like, looked like a 4 square block. But that's where you had to stand when you're in the elevator. So it had gotten to the point where we were, as much as possible, gloves, masks, and the whole bit. And we lived really near in Harlem by Columbia University, and would hear, ambulances going by, all day, every day. That's all you really heard. So being at ground zero in New York when that moment is taking place was really, alarming in a way that like, you're like, whoa, this is serious. So, with our team, those guys had to get home. We had some guys that, are from Europe and other places across the country. And, first and foremost, we just wanted to get them home for their safety. And, since it's been back, I've tried to be really, I think, sensitive and understanding to the way that our student athletes right now are kind of experiencing life a little bit. Certainly you want to continue to try to build the program, and there's other different kind of ways to look at that and probably to handle that. The one thing that I've done consistently was, I guess I'll get back to maybe a week or two ago. I didn't understand, because it's such a weird time, on how, like, how the recruiting, how like our jobs, how things kind of needed to work in this time of, in this sensitive moment, right? So trying to be sensitive to recruits, trying to be sensitive to coaches and all those things. And it's kind of like, actually in our industry, the engine has revved up so much that it seems like, the kind of push with things, that the speed that things are moving right now in our industry is mind blowing, to be honest with you. There's so many kids, verbally committing. There's kids in the transfer portal. There's kids that are grad transfers. There's a little bit of everything going on. So it was almost like, a reality check for me was like, hey, this is the way business is being done. So let's do business this way. But also knowing that, it's a very sensitive time in our world. But, I have responsibilities as a husband and a dad also, that, those things need to be, handled also.
A lot of schools you'll see have been doing things like, Zoom workouts. The same coaches have been, sending workouts to guys, guys have been doing academic meetings at certain schools. What have you guys done to kind of just make sure the players are staying up the tab on their workouts and their academics?
Yeah, well, for us, we are not allowed through, MEAC rules or NCAA rules to do MEAC, to do Zoom workouts. There can be nothing right now that's organized. So it's going to be up to our student athletes to individually kind of, work out on their own if that's what they choose. The one thing I just really want for our guys is just for them to be safe and don't put themselves in harm or don't put anyone, don't put anyone in harm. So kind of just stay quarantined, stay in, really focus on your academics, because we only have a couple of weeks left in the semester. And if there's room for you to do things that you have to do strength and conditioning wise, please take care of it. But it's not like that's not important. The most important thing right now is for those guys to take care of themselves, take care of their loved ones, and finish up their academics for the year with some momentum going into next semester or next year.
Do you see this kind of impacting basketball next year? I actually saw a tweet on Twitter. Head coach Tom Crean, who's a head coach at the University of Georgia, he tweeted out the other day basically something like, for student athletes, there's not going to be any excuses next year when the season rolls around and the time to roll the balls out. And if guys' games aren't kind of up to par, they're not going to be able to use that excuse like, oh, the coronavirus was took up the whole spring and the summer, so I wasn't able to get better. Like, nobody's really going to want to hear that excuse come November, December when games are playing. How do you feel about, because obviously you stated, the most thing right now is just staying safe, making sure you're healthy and, you're not putting anybody in harm's way. So kind of, how do you feel that this will kind of impact the game going forward into next season? Do you think it'll kind of take more time to kind of get back into the rhythm of things?
That's a great question, and I don't know. We're heading down the unknown right now, and the thing that I really kind of look at is that the guys, I'm way older, right? But for me to pick up a basketball and kind of get back to the point where I can incorporate myself in a pickup game, and I don't, it's not that difficult to do. I think a big part of it is just the conditioning part, but putting in the work also, for a short time, I think guys can get back to that point where we can have great and exciting games.
Obviously right now we're at a time where, recruiting is really tough. You can't have any guys on campus for visits. You can't really go out after the spring live period already got canceled. How has this virus kind of affected you guys' recruiting plans going forward?
It hasn't. I don't think it's affected it as much. Today, because of there's so much content digitally, you can find a young man's whole season on YouTube if you really if you dig hard enough. They have mixtapes and highlight tapes and all those different things that you can get a sense and a feel for people. Obviously you want to see people in person. You can't judge maybe sometimes speed and quickness by, films, or you can't judge intangibles sometimes by some of those methods of viewing. But, we've had to kind of learn fast and move on with it. Right now we had 6 scholarships going into this period right after the season, and we have 5 commitments so far. So we're really happy and enthusiastic about the way things have gone so far for us.
Great. Obviously, not only this year, but in the last 2-3 years, kind of there's been a plethora of names entering the transfer portal. I think as of like yesterday, the day before, it was something like 650 names that are in the transfer portal. And a lot of those guys are coming from smaller schools and trying to transfer up to these higher level schools to kind of play at the highest level, quote unquote. And obviously right now there's a rule that's kind of been deliberated over within the NCAA on whether they're going to allow first-time transfers to be immediately eligible. How do you think that would affect like low and mid-major basketball when essentially, your team's best player is going to be getting recruited by higher level schools each and every year?
Yeah, well, it will affect, every level of basketball. I think people need to have the right information in order to be able to make those decisions, to be honest with you. There was a great line on Twitter, I think from Mr. Goodman, where he talked about that there was, I think, in last year's X amount of guys had gone from a mid-major to a high major. All those guys averaged double figures before they went to those schools, and none of them averaged double figures at any of the Power 5 schools. So, the grass isn't always greener. When you look at situations, it should be about fit and an opportunity. Not necessarily going to the highest level is the best thing for an individual. So it will definitely change things. It will make things a lot faster. And as we're kind of seeing the trend right now, It's going from, the transfer portal to, JUCO to prep school kids and down to high school kids. And high school kids right now are the last ones that are kind of being left out. So, if you're patient and you're kind of doing your due diligence and, really getting after it recruiting wise, there's a lot of really good players that are going to be available. It's almost like there's too many good players and not enough Division I schools.
Yeah, right. Obviously, right now we're in a time period, but like you said, you kind of have to evaluate a lot of film, do a lot of phone calls, and obviously if this rule gets passed, next season, which would allow people to transfer without having to sit out, a lot of people might, say you pick a school now and maybe the coach didn't do enough of an evaluation, maybe you kind of rushed the decision a little bit. People might be, the transfer numbers are going to go through the roof, next coming years, as a result. What do you think, I guess, are the implications, at every level for high school players coming in, who might not be able to get that valuable experience, who might not be able to, after maybe the live period affected them, or, how do you think this is going to have a trickle down, I guess, on college basketball?
Yeah, I know for us at Howard, the most important thing is to try to build a program and build culture. And we'd like to try to stay as 4-year guys as possible with guys coming through the program. One of the things that, I'd like to do, and we've done it last year, we'll do it again this year, is that we'll redshirt 1 or 2 guys. As you guys know, our league is really old and it's really physical. We're playing, we could have been playing you guys at Coppin, and, one of your guys hand checked one of my 6'6", 170-pound guards and just kind of rolled them out of bounds.
Yeah.
So it's it wasn't a foul; it was a good play. So for us, we have to get older in our program. We are going to take a look this year at some grad guys and the transfer route a little bit, but the meat and potatoes of our program are going to be the guys that are coming through that are going to be 4-year guys. And that's really important. And it's important for our university because we really pride ourselves on being a school that really tries to produce student athletes that, after they're done can really go out and have a successful and impact on their community and in society.
So obviously, you mentioned, Howard University and playing in the MEAC. Obviously, this is your first year coaching at Howard, going into year 2 this upcoming year. What is your vision for Howard University going forward, under Coach Kenny Blakeney? Like, where would you like to see Howard, 5 years from now?
Well, I think that with the things that, our university has, the tradition and the history of our university, I think the direction of, Dr. Wayne Fredericks, our president, a guy who I really like and admire a whole lot. He's a guy that's always really trying to push to improve and upgrade the university in every single way. And I love what he's done, especially while I've been there and getting to know him and his cabinet and support staff, the people around him in his office. Our AD is a guy, Kerry Davis. Mr. Davis is a guy that, former basketball player from the Bronx, played at Dartmouth, did his graduate work as a graduate assistant at Cornell, and then was at HBO for 17 years. And, a lot of the things that we probably watched over that time period from, all the fights with Mayweather and Real Sports and 24/7. Mr. Davis has his fingerprints directly on a lot of those things that have taken place. So to have a guy that has that kind of experience and also a brilliant entrepreneurial marketing mind, our vision for Howard is to try to make it a top 50 program if we can, and to make it one of the best programs in the country. I joke and I'm a dreamer, and I'm a big idea guy. Like, I don't know why we can't be a Gonzaga. I don't know why we can't be a St. Mary's. I don't know why we can't be a Butler. I've kind of saw how those programs went from, I guess, regional programs to national programs. I grew up watching Georgetown, from the time that, I was born in 1971, so I'm an old head. But I saw Georgetown, from, the late 70s when I remembered and watched them all the time, until the 80s become a local program to more kind of a, mid-regional, mid-Atlantic kind of program with the Big East and the schools that are in those areas to becoming a national program. So our brand is one that can certainly, I think, do that. We just have to continue to grind and, try to do our best every day to uphold the brand of what, people have done before us at the university.
Well, that's all the questions that we have for you today, Coach. We want to thank you for coming on our segment of Coach's Corner. We really appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck going forward at Howard University.
Hey, man, I'm just glad you guys ain't got no more eligibility, man. No, you guys are doing a great job. I'm super proud at the things you guys are doing, man, and best of luck. Anything you guys need from us, don't hesitate. You got it.
Thanks a lot, Coach. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.
You as well, Coach.